basic,
saw it.
but it is.
So
Yeah.
it's really good. So, wait, does that mean the meeting's
Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of May 14th, 2014. Will the council members please introduce themselves?
Dan Haggerty.
Lisa Ketchum.
Laura Stein.
Joel Janot?
Okay. The first item on our agenda is the Board of Supervisors report. Supervisor Horses, Legislative Aide Nicholas Calderon will provide his
Thank you.
report.
Give me 1 second here. My apologies, sorry. Alright. There we go. Okay. So, first thing, we're going to start advertising a little bit early, but June 6th, Supervisor Horsley will be hosting Donuts with Dawn and Coffee with Kevin in Pacifica at, I know. We didn't really put that one together until after it was too late. Yeah, so Donuts with Dawn and Coffee with Kevin will be on June 6th in Pacifica at Mazzetti's, and it'll be from 8 to 9:30. So anyone who's has anything to talk to the supervisor or Assemblyman Kevin Mullen, please feel free to swing on by and talk to both. It's a good opportunity to express your joy or frustration with both local and state government. It's a good opportunity. Hopefully more people will show up to say they're happy than not, so, but we'll see. Surfers Beach, to provide a quick update, I had a conversation with Tammy Grove from the Coastal Commission. She had shot me an email, and the last conference call we had that Chris was on, we had talked about a scope of work for an RFP to get a consultant to start the planning and the environmental and the design for a retaining wall, a vertical access staircase, and a 400-foot long section of the coastal trail. So Tammy, and one of the things we want to do is keep the Coastal Commission involved throughout this process, because a project at this location and a project of this size, it's important to be collaborative. So we're working with the Coastal Commission every step of the way. They had some comments, so we are giving Caltrans an opportunity to review the Coastal Commission's comments with their environmental team, with their design team, and they're going to get back to us, at which point we're going to schedule a conference call. We will make sure that Chris, as well as Neil Merrilies, are on that conference call so they can come back and report to you guys as well. I am also happy, very happy to announce or report that the city of Half Moon Bay has put $100,000 in their budget to support this project. So this is truly a collaborative effort. We were very happy that the city of Half Moon Bay was supportive of, not just supportive of our efforts, but willing to allocate funds or appropriate funds for this project. So we were very happy. We were very appreciative of the Half Moon Bay City Council and thank them for approving that. We have 8 interviews next week for COASTSIDE Design Review Committee. So that's exciting. We had 9. One person had to drop out, but we still have a good amount. I don't think we've ever had 8 candidates for COASTSIDE Design Review. So this is exciting, and a lot of positions will hopefully be filled during this process. So we're very happy with that. And then lastly on May 20th, at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, they will be voting and hopefully approving the contract with DKS, who's the lead consulting firm on the COASTSIDE on the Midcoast Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan. The plan actually looks at both the Midcoast and Half Moon Bay, and we're going to look at how do we mitigate existing traffic and how do we do how do we project future population and future build out, and how do we mitigate for that traffic. So so there's going to be another collaborative effort between the county, between Half Moon Bay, Caltrans, the special districts out here, Samtrans, and so we're looking forward to this, and hopefully everything goes just fine on May 20th at the board meeting, and we'll be good to go. We'll be good to go from there.
You left us out?
The community naturally is involved. No, I want you to know, in the RFP that we released, the Midcoast Community Council was explicitly stated as a stakeholder, and so the consultants will be eventually coming to the MCC when they have something to bring forward. So, no, you guys will not be left out, the community will not be left out. We are bringing on, actually, part of the consultant team is, one of the members is Kendall Flint, who, Flint Strategies is doing the, Plan Princeton, and so she is very familiar with the COASTSIDE, with the Midcoast, with the stakeholders, how to do the best outreach possible, and so she was part of the consulting team that received the bid. So we're very excited about that and know that she's going to do a phenomenal job reaching out to the Midcoast Community Council, the special districts, and the community at large. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you, and thank God.
I will let him know. Now, I am not, last meeting, I was told that I'd be asked every meeting from there on out if I have an update on, Bill, how you doing? If I had an update on, I saw the wheels turning, so I thought I'd address it. The fence on 7th Street, so we are waiting to hear back from the Coastal Commission. Last meeting, there was a conversation about why is the Coastal Commission involved. The reason is because any project in that area is appealable to the Coastal Commission, and just like our Surfers Beach project, and hopefully all projects going forward, it is best, and we look forward to working with the Coastal Commission on the front end of the project as to mitigate any issues on the back end. So we're waiting to hear back from them, at which point we will be able to let the community know things like dates, designs, and any other important information that you guys are interested in. But as of right now, I don't have any of that information. And I'm done unless anyone has any questions.
Does anyone have questions for Nicholas? Anyone in the audience have questions for Nicholas?
Well, don't force them.
Thank you. Are there any other government officials who want to report on an item not on the agenda? Okay, so next we have public comment. Pardon? Public comment. Do you want to go first on public comment?
Yes.
Anyone may speak up to 3 minutes on any topic not on the agenda.
Dan Haggerty, 25-year resident of El Granada, and just wanted to let everyone know that I am in support of a yes vote on Measure G. A yes vote would allow Granada Sanitary District to convert to a community services district, which would allow them to provide to our community a Parks and Rec program. I want to say that I remember as a child growing up, I lived a block and a half away from a park and a rec center, and it was just, I remember being about 5 years old and just showing up for the Little League signups, and I just remember it was a great experience as a child to have that close to home. Later on in the years, I did a lot of skateboarding, and we had the hills in San Francisco. Today, they're doing the half pipes and the skate parks. So these are things that the kids want and really desire this day and age. So I want to say that I think, knowing that we have a small town, I don't think that it really would need to be an elaborate Parks and Rec setup. Ultimately, it would be decided what's most important by the community. And I want to say that there has been some talk about the cost. There would be a very minimal cost of the raise in rates. Property taxes would not and could not rise as a result of this. It's projected out to be, after 1 year, a $1 a month increase in rates. The following year, I think it's $2. After that, $3, $4, $5, going up to like $8 a month, 5 years, 6 years out. So our district has historically been very frugal and always given our community more for less. So I think it's a great deal. Some of the benefits could be providing a rec center that could a rec Parks and Rec in the area to where we could walk from our house to small parks. We could provide volunteer opportunities for the teenagers growing up. Could be the future, our leaders of the future. There's property values. There's many, many, many benefits to having taking this step. So I encourage everyone to vote yes on Measure G. Thank you very much.
Chris?
So first, I apologize for not being at the meeting a couple weeks ago. I'm very disappointed. It's one I really wanted to attend because of the Moss Beach skate park situation, which I want to talk about in just a second, but a couple of quick things while the entire audience is here. I attended a COASTSIDE Design Review Committee meeting on May 8th, and at that time, county staff indicated that the Big Wave project will be coming to CDRC next month, so in June. And the Mavericks apartment complex right over there at Portola will be coming in July. So if those are things that are of interest to you, CDRC meets at 1:30 on Thursdays, the second Thursday of the month. So you can go to the county website for the exact dates on that. But I know those are two big issues. Nicholas, the issue with Big Wave coming before CDRC in June is that Princeton does not have a representative on CDRC. I was told that possibly one will be seated before the June meeting, but I mentioned to county staff, and I mentioned before that in 2 years on CDRC, what I think is most important for an effective member of CDRC is experience. And it just is very concerning to me that even if we have somebody seated, that person is coming in cold. And not only coming in cold, but because Princeton is not called out in the CDRC ordinance, we're not even looking at the usual guidelines. We're going back to the 1976. This is what will be used to review Big Wave at CDRC in June. So I appreciate that we have 8 people for interviews, and that's awesome. Next year, it'll be great when those people are seated and have experience. But to have such a massive project with such community interest and have a brand new person, and it's possible that one of the architects will not be there, leaving us with the problem that we had in Montera a few months ago, which is there will only be 2 people, which is a quorum, but can set up a 1-1 situation. 1 vote for and 1 vote against, and we're stuck in the 1 vote against or the 1 vote for, depending on the community, gets the total focal point of everybody's ire. So, and one of those 2 people may be only been on the job for a couple of weeks. So it's good that we're having it come before CDRC, but I just, it's not going to get the full attention that I think a project like this deserves. So, okay, so I just wanted to say that, but I really appreciate the efforts that made the staff up. And like I said, next year it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. I do worry about the person that's coming in with 2 weeks to be on this committee for their sake. Another issue I wanted to raise was I saw in the paper that the Harbor District is thinking about tearing down Romeo Pier or dismantling it or whatever. And nobody loves that pier more than me. I think it's a majestic piece of the harbor, but it is going to fall down. And when it falls down, it's going to be a mess. And so it does need to be taken out of there before it becomes a huge mess. And as I was thinking about it, reading the comments in the paper of people saying, oh, we got to save the pier. I hope it doesn't become like the bridge thing in Half Moon Bay where we've got, people that are just going to, handcuff themselves to the pier and, we can't let this thing go. So as a compromise, and I was hoping that Sabrina Brennan would be here, but since Nicholas is here, one thing we could do is, the real thing that people love, I think, about the pier is not the pilings, it's the superstructure, specifically the shed with the crab on it. I think that that's the thing that sticks out. And so what if we took part of that and dismantled this thing for the environmental safety of the harbor and took the superstructure, or at least that shed with the crab on it, and put it in some kind of storage so that when we do plan Princeton, hopefully there will be some kind of community and visitor-facing installation that has a little bit of history, some signboards or something, you know, this would be kind of a quaint little piece of the old harbor that could come back and be inside a little museum of Princeton. Princeton's got a rich history. There should be, if we're going to plan Princeton and build it up to something, I feel like there should be a little museum or a historic component, and this could be a nice little thing, the actual superstructure right off the pier, put it in storage for a year or two, and then bring it and have it be part of the new Princeton. And that way we don't lose it, because I saw in the paper that the Harbor Commission was saying, we're going to take all these pictures and it won't be lost for history. Well, that's true, but wouldn't it be cool to go into a little, history of Princeton museum, and there's that shed that we've all looked at for 20 years or longer, me only 20, but for longer. So that's an idea on that I had for that. The last thing, and I'm sorry, I missed last week, so or last month, so I had a couple things built up. The Moss Beach skate park's spotty. I listened to all the discussion of that in the last meeting. I really appreciate Roy Ramos, the facilities director for CSEA, coming to what he had to know would have been possibly a non-receptive crowd. So kudos to him, kudos to everybody that came for really, elevating the conversation to, this is how we feel, what can we do, and not getting into finger pointing. It is a I think it's a travesty. Bill Kehoe and others have said it, that there's nothing for the tweens and the teens to do. And I heard that there's 20-something guys hanging out and stuff. Again, playgrounds don't work. You want those 28-year-old guys hanging out at the playground? No, that's going to look creepy too. They need a place to go as well. I also think it sends the wrong message. I took my 6-year-old there in October because I wanted to show him what teenagers had done. I took him there. We didn't take a skateboard or anything. I took him there to show him, look, these are kids. Look what these kids did. Look at what they built here. Look at all the tools they brought in. Look at the sacks of cement and the bricks and the design that went into it. It's an engineering feat that they did there. And the rapidity with which this thing went from not really even on the radar to them tearing it out, in my opinion, was way too fast. I'm not quite sure why that property was able to be kind of open to the public for decades, and then all of a sudden within a couple of months we've got fence and armed patrol and tearing out the skate park. Again, the rapidity with which that process went through confuses me. I don't understand it. I heard people saying that, well, it's private property, and if somebody finds that you're building on private property, there's nothing you can do. However, at the very end of the conversation last meeting, Dave and Len Erickson had a brief discussion of something called prescriptive easement, which, I don't want to get litigious or anything either, but that's kind of what was de facto going on there for decades, which is the community was using it, and the owners were either ignorant or willfully ignorant in letting it happen. And so that's why I don't understand why in a month and a half, 2 months, this went from everybody using it and no problems. Also, I look at the police log, not every week, so I might have missed it, but just about every week, and I have not seen a rash of incidents around that skate park. So when Mr. Ramos was talking about a bunch of phone calls and emails, I heard people that live adjacent to the park saying that they love it. A man, Richard Gates, almost broke down in tears, and he lives right next to it. And I totally sympathize. I understand, but I just, prescriptive easement would have worked there. All the criteria for prescriptive easement were there, and it could have been worked, but it wasn't even explored or discussed. And again, I don't understand how this went so fast. And the only thing I can think of, and I'm trying to wrap it up, Lisa, is that this has to do with who was using that. Somehow this is about the skaters, about the people that go there, about the people that have four-wheel drives and long hair and skateboards and stuff. And that's, to me, somewhat what was behind this, because there's no other explanation for me. Again, I don't see the police logs overflowing. I've been by there. I hear the people living there saying it's fine. And, you know, now nobody can use it, but not just nobody. Garbage trucks can use it. So, you know, the last thing is, it just really bothers me that we as a society are ready to just say, hey, insurance says we can't do it. What can we do? You can't fight. It used to be you can't stop fight City Hall. Now it's you can't fight liability. What can you do? Well, prescriptive easement is a solution towards that. And liability, I mean, let's stand up and say,
We could put this on the agenda again if you
and we probably will, but let's stand up and say, you know what, there are other things than letting insurance liability run the world. And where was that insurance liability concern for the last 25 years? Thank you for listening.
Any other public comment?
Yes.
You have an announcement?
Very nice.
Please let's not talk more about the property.
Why not?
Okay, thank you.
He's going to screen my comments. Okay, first of all, it's been my goal to promote the COASTSIDE Design Review Committee because it's sort of flat. And first of all, I want to thank Lisa and Chris Lang because we've never had this many applicants, and a lot of this had to do with the kind of outreach that we all did for that, and they especially. And Nicholas, I'm just going to ask you very briefly, what kind of action can we take regarding the big wave issue, because that's very serious. Or who should I talk to?
Can I speak? I didn't know you were going to bring that up again. When Chris brought it up, I thought to mention, but I thought I could do it offline. I think it may have been a leap to say that Big Wave North Parcel Alternative is in Princeton. It's right next door to Pillar Ridge, and we're in Moss Beach. So, you know, maybe that's a discussion to have, that it doesn't depend on a Princeton rep. Perhaps it could be considered Moss Beach. It's in an area where nothing's been built before.
North of Denison
And-
Creek, so that's
and-
Moss Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, and it was moved to the north parcel in order to be next to Pillar Ridge. We are in Moss Beach. We are in the census district for Moss Beach. We are in the water and sanitary district for Moss Beach. And we identify it with Moss Beach. So I
So
don't
it's
know
in
why
Mo-
that has to be.
So it's in Moss Beach?
is the,
So what I can do is, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make a joke of that. So what I'll do is, let me go back and talk with planning and building and see if we can have this addressed by Moss Beach representatives of COASTSIDE Design Review, and if we can have it, I guess, reviewed under the current, I guess, Design Review Committee guidelines for Moss Beach instead of Princeton, as Moss Beach is updated and Princeton is not.
Because basically this project has a four-building wellness center, which is these are residential buildings.
Understood.
So, you know.
Yeah, let me go back and talk with planning and building and see if we can make that happen. Other than that, you know, I don't, I know that I had conversations today, and we are working hard to get, so the interviews are next Monday. The board meeting to approve all of that, we have pushed to get it on the May 20th meeting, so that would give them time between then and the next CDRC meeting to have the official training that they need. So we're trying to make it work time-wise, but I do understand what Chris is saying as far as, you know, not having adequate experience
But Chris is like so right on, and so I
to
guess
address
what I would
such a
ask
large
is
project.
if we could connect, so that then we can figure out sub-strategy here.
Mhm.
You know, and not wait till the last minute and then it's still happening.
Yes.
I forgot to add one thing on that, which the big document that I held up, another reason they're using that is because this is a commercial project with a residential aspect to it, which now falls under CDRC. But we have not, in my 2 years, we have not looked at any project like this. And so
No.
in addition to being, having a new member on, we're looking at different guidelines than we've ever looked at before in the last couple of years, which is signage and other kinds of commercial elements. So it's just gonna be a real, challenging project to look at CVRC.
So I'm not looking to engage in a whole new discussion on this. I'm just curious if someone could briefly summarize as to why it's being considered Princeton and why the old one.
We don't know. I can only assume that Camille and the project applicant decided that was considered.
Okay, all right, so.
County staff, Camille Young and Dennis Aguirre both said, confirmed or said verbally at the last meeting that this was a Princeton
Okay.
project.
And I know that, you know, when I've talked to them, they said Princeton as well. So let me go ahead and talk with them tomorrow.
I don't think it's set in stone.
Okay.
I just guess.
We'll figure it out.
All right. Leonard.
Submitted the speaker slip for one topic, but first, some technical correction. The Pillar Ridge is Moss Beach. Big Wave is Princeton. If you look at the map books, Big Wave parcels 047, those are El Granada. The map book 047 is El Granada. And all of Big Wave is within the Granada Sanitary District. None of it is within the Montero Water and Sanitary District. And I'm not commenting on whether, in terms of community, it may make more sense to consider it Moss Beach, but from a purely technical point of view, well, it's actually not El Granada either, it's Princeton. But Princeton and El Granada are the same map book. What I came up here to talk about is Measure G, to reorganize the Granada Sanitary District into a Community Services District, and I got here late, so I missed a lot of what Chris said and anybody before him. But as I said at a previous meeting here, the Moss Beach Skate Park is a really good example of why recreation facilities need to be publicly owned. And there are people with various objections to the reorganization of the Granada Sanitary District. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has put forth a viable alternative. And as a board member of a nearby district like to say, perfect is the enemy of done. You can hold out for what you think might be the perfect solution, but you're never going to get it. This is as close to perfect as you're going to get. The last attempt was 20 years ago, in 1994. It's probably not going to be tried again for another 20 years. So do we want to lose another generation of kids not having proper recreational facilities and parks? You either vote for this or you get nothing for another generation. And some of the objection, and you'll never hear it publicly, but there is a talk about post from last year that explicitly says this. A whole lot of the opposition is from people that don't like the current board. But there's an election every 2 years. You have different board members. But if this doesn't pass this time, the will and the resources are gone. Never going to be tried again. It's just not going to be tried again. So people need to set aside how they feel about the current board. They need to set aside all of the political bickering that goes on the coast side and do what's best for the whole community, do what's best for the kids, and that is vote for Measure G. And the Measure G committee, and there's...
We need to wrap it up. We're just about 3 minutes here.
There's at least 2 Midcoast Council members on the Measure G committee. I'm not on it. There's, I think, 3 county supervisors have formally endorsed it. Most of the Midcoast Council members have endorsed it. Many former elected officials, former Midcoast Council members, former Granada Sanitary District Board members, the collection of current and former elected officials that have endorsed it is huge. It's a real accomplishment for the committee.
We're way over 3 minutes. Okay, so if you could give other folks a chance to talk, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I hope I've made my point.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. I have a couple of announcements. There's a coastal erosion plan public workshop as part of developing a coastal regional sediment or sand management plan for the coastline from Pillar Point to Moss Landing. The public workshop is Tuesday, May 20th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club. That's 214 Princeton Avenue in Princeton. For more information, check the MCC website, midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. The second item is County Parks will hold a community meeting on Fitzgerald Marine Reserve Creek and Forest Habitat Management Plans. That's Thursday, May 22nd, from 7 to 9 p.m. at Cypress Meadows, 343 Cypress Avenue in Moss Beach. Okay, moving on, does any council members have any requested changes to the agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll provide a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. The first item on our regular agenda, COASTSIDE Emergency Corps. We have Nick Gattuso, the County Office of Emergency Services COASTSIDE District Coordinator, who will give a presentation, and there will be time to ask questions and provide feedback.
Well, thank you very much to the council for having me back. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nick Gattuso, and I'm the recently hired dedicated COASTSIDE Office of Emergency Services Coordinator. And one of my primary jobs is to kind of organize and reinvigorate the emergency services, especially when it comes to the citizens who are trained in emergency response, to be a little more on the same page up and down the coast. And we know the San Mateo County coast is a large area with small pockets of population. They don't interact a tremendous amount for the most part. And so we are looking for ways to kind of get that back on track. We recently graduated the largest CERT class that the COASTSIDE has ever had, and Mr. Kehoe was one of our star students and graduates. I have video of him putting out a fire with a fire extinguisher and everything. And it was a tremendous turnout. And so, you know, we're trying to do, some people have heard rumors that the Medical Reserve Corps has folded up and is no longer in existence. I'm very happy to say that we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and that's not really true. So we're in the stage now where we're trying to put together a program where the CERT folks and the Medical Reserve Corps folks, the emergency responders, the ham radio operators, can all work together in a little more cohesive and geographically localized groups. For what purpose? Obviously to save lives. I mean, that's what this is all about. So we came up with, and this is strictly an idea at this point, it's subject to any sort of commentary or updates or ideas, the COASTSIDE Emergency Corps. What we're planning on doing with this, if we could see, I think the next slide we're ready for, you know, what happens when we have a big disaster? You know, how well are we prepared? We all know that the COASTSIDE is isolated. We know there are only a couple of ways in and out in terms of roadways. And so we're going to have to fend for ourselves, potentially for several days. And that's why the CERT training is so important. City and county. We have one, of course, incorporated city, Half Moon Bay. They no longer have a police department, so the sheriff's department is now responsible for their law enforcement. And that means that there is now only one law enforcement agency for the entire San Mateo County coast. And that simplifies things for us. Go ahead. Well, what is the COASTSIDE Emergency Corps? Again, you know, we're looking for snappy names. So if anybody can come up with something that has a really cool acronym, my business is so filled with acronyms that I'm still trying to figure out a lot of them. But COASTSIDE Emergency Corps is our first idea. Why? Obviously, we talked about why a little bit. Who? We're talking about the people on the coast who are CERT trained. Anyone besides Bill have been through CERT training? Wonderful. So we have a lot of people that have been through CERT up and down the coast, but once they graduated, they really haven't done much with that. And one of the things that my job description entails is getting those folks reinvigorated, have some drills, have some meetings, have a communications plan in place to activate the different groups. What's the process? Let's go. This is, again, just a starting point, just an idea. So we have a disaster. You know, what does that look like? A wildfire. Right about now, it's a good time to think about wildfires and what's going on in our state. It could be a tsunami. It could be an earthquake. It could be an outbreak of a disease. Anybody participate in the Silver Dragon exercise? Handing out simulated anthrax vaccines door to door to test the system. It was a big success throughout the county, and the COASTSIDE participated as well. Ham radio operators, in the event of a big earthquake, when we've lost all our normal communications, hams are going to be absolutely critical. But we have hams up and down the coast, and some of them belong to the same group, some of them belong to different groups that don't always do a lot of communicating. Any hams in here? Okay. So, what do we do? Everybody knows about KEEP, right? We have any KEEP members in here? Other than Bill and kind of myself? Anybody know what KEEP is? Not know what KEEP is. Okay, KEEP is an organization. I don't know why they call it KEEP, because CEAP to me doesn't say keep, it says SEEP. But that's the way they
You're still training.
I'm still training, exactly. So this is a community emergency, what is it, Bill? Community emergency
Action plan.
action program. And really, it's run through the Chamber of Commerce. Cherise McHugh down at Half Moon Bay is kind of the head person on this. And it's a resource list of all the different businesses and individuals up and down the coast who have agreed to share resources in an emergency. Restaurants, hotels, hardware stores, medical, you name it, they're on the list if they agree that they want to be called on during an emergency. So it's a great program. They'll be involved. The CERT folks, everybody know what CERT is? Community Emergency Response Teams. You go through a month of training, several hours a night, one night a week, and a final Saturday day of testing, and you learn how to do some light search and rescue, you learn how to do some first aid, you learn how to put out small fires, you learn how to take care of yourself and your family, and then your neighbors, and then if it's really big and they need you somewhere else, you can be mobilized to other parts of the county. You get sworn in as a disaster service worker. You get a really cool backpack with a helmet and gloves and a flashlight and all kinds of neat stuff in there. And you're actually part of that response.
I wanted to ask if you wanted to take that type of, where is it community college, or how do you take that?
We put it on right here. Our COASTSIDE Fire, Ari DeLay, who has two hats as a battalion chief for COASTSIDE Fire and is also the chief of the La Honda Volunteer Fire Department, and Battalion Chief Dave Cosgrave are my two kind of primary instructors. And they also have other firefighters who come in and help, and I help a little bit, even though I'm still kind of new to it. My experience is in law enforcement, so I give the little different perspective than the firefighters on the CERT. But the main thing about CERT, and it's so important, especially if you live in a place where you may not get outside help for a while, is that you become part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Because people that can't take care of themselves are going to be part of the problem. And the first responders are going to be overwhelmed in a big event very quickly. So the whole idea is self-sufficiency and being able to take care of those emergencies on your own. Trying to be mindful of the time here, because I can rattle on all day. So again, this is just a starting place. We're looking for something to unify the coast, and this is what we're coming up with. We're not sure what the final product is going to look like, but this is a place to begin. We've got to start somewhere. What are we going to do? We're going to develop a program that have these different emergency response groups involved with it, and we're going to put it into 3 different zones is our plan for right now. These zones, this is not too easy to see, and if anybody would like, I can email you these maps. so that you can see them on your screen, be a little easier to look at. These are not set in stone again. They're basically divided into A, B, and C zones, starting in the north on this side of the tunnel, of course, and going down all the way down to the Santa Cruz County line, with the major population densities kind of being the focal point of the three zones. The important part of these zones, besides the population densities, is that the ham operators in each zone can communicate with each other, and then you can see those three lines that go together and then go off to the right on the left-hand picture, and that's the communications link with the Emergency Operations Center in Redwood City, the OES Center in Redwood City. So, this is kind of self-explanatory. Will it work? Well, you never really know about that. We had a plan for aircraft crashes at San Francisco International. Everybody knew the plan. Everyone knew the plan. We practiced the plan. All the cops in San Mateo County knew what their roles were. Each department knew what would they do. And sure enough, comes Asiana Flight 214. So all the cops went down to all the posts where they were supposed to stop traffic around the airport, and they did an excellent job and shut it down completely. But that didn't really solve too many problems, and it created a lot of issues that we weren't expecting because we hadn't had to exercise this thing in a real-life event, thankfully, for forever. So we learned a lot of things, and one of the things we learned is that that plan, even though we had it, wasn't really the right thing, so we have to constantly review. Does it make the community safer? Will our plan do that? Is it more effective than each jurisdiction working on their own? Of course it is. It always is. What's the number one issue when there's any sort of an emergency or disaster? Young man in the tan outfit. Communication. Thank you. Always. I swear to God we didn't talk before. That's always the biggest problem. Everybody's on a different radio frequency. Nobody knows who's going where. I mean, everyone wants to go help, but no one's quite sure what to do when it's really a disaster. For a couple of hours, we thought that the PG&E pipeline explosion was a plane crash. The media was telling everyone it was a plane crash. Officers arriving on the scene thought it was a plane crash, firefighters. They saw a big thing, they thought it was a piece of fuselage. Well, it was a piece of a gigantic gas pipe that was ruptured and up on top of the ground burning. So, you know, communications, hugely important. Now, which jurisdiction is it? City of Half Moon Bay, County of San Mateo? I don't care. We don't care. It's an emergency. People's lives are at stake. And people say, well, you know, the people in Half Moon Bay are worried about whether it's within their city limits because there are issues about reimbursement from the federal government if you have a disaster and all these sorts of things. I'm telling you that as far as the first responders are concerned, we don't care what jurisdiction it's in. We go, we figure it out later. That's one of the reasons that we have certain paperwork protocols that we have to follow so that later on if we go to get reimbursement, we've used the correct forms and followed the right incident command system. Oh, that can't be the end of the slideshow already. Okay, very good. Well, I would love to have any questions that you may have because we have, like I said, this is just a starting point and we're open for suggestions. Yes, sir.
I just saw on the maps there, Nick, you said it.
Oh, you know what? I think you need to come up and use the microphone.
Oh, yeah, sure. I just saw on the maps there, it starts in the south end of the tunnel there, and is this a San Mateo County program, or just strictly the coast side?
Yes.
I, being a Pacifica resident, I'm sure there's plans in place from that side, but I just felt it was a San Mateo thing. Okay,
Just for home audience, Jim, the KEEP meetings on the first Friday of the month down at the EOC in Half Moon Bay, there's always a representative from the the Pacifica Police Department there. So they are tied into some of this, but they have a city plan themselves, which is separate from what Nicholas is talking about on that. But and as long as I'm up here, sorry, I didn't need to jump in here, but the KEEP meeting is as the first Friday, 8:30 to 9:30 is the executive committee meeting, and that's people that represent different local agencies, and the MCC has Joel is on there as a rep and I'm his backup. But there's also an open meeting at 9:30 to 10:30 that anybody from the community is welcome to come to and see what's going on, and maybe get interested in a lot of different things that they're working on. And also that's where we announce, among other places, when the next cert class is coming up. But there is one planned for the summertime, I just don't have a date.
Is there a cost involved in it?
Every 6 months, to answer someone's question about when can you take the classes, at the current level of personnel that it takes to run them and the organization to put it together, we're looking at doing one every 6 months. It may be more often than that if we generate enough interest. The main thing, though, is once people are trained, part of this plan is to exercise these groups within their zones, and then also exercise the entire COASTSIDE community, COASTSIDE Emergency Corps on some exercises so that they will do a lot of communicating and working together with the interests of the public, of course, being what's in.
Is there a cost for the training?
Pardon me?
Is there a cost for the CERT training?
No.
Okay, great, thanks.
No. And also, Bill made me promise I would mention that Disaster Prep Day, the county-wide Disaster Prep Day at the fairgrounds, will be on June the 7th. And we'll have all of our trucks and toys and all kinds of things. And Rack the Block is this Saturday, Main Street, Half Moon Bay.
Be ready.
I'll have a booth there too, handing out flyers. Don't miss it.
Leonard, did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I did the CERT training long enough ago that I don't remember how long ago it was. And apparently the legal landscape has changed since I did it. At the time I did it, the first CERT trained member on site, prior to any professional first responders arriving, the first CERT person on site was in charge until the first professional arrived. And I understand that's no longer true, and I've also, I believe I understand that even certain people on site are not really allowed to do anything and not legally protected anymore because of changes in the rules or the law. So that needs to be clarified. But ultimately what we need is a refresher course. It's a lot shorter so that we don't have the big time commitment and focuses on what has changed since we may have been through it. I've mentioned this to some people privately, but nothing has happened, so now I'm mentioning it to you publicly.
It's one of the reasons they hired me, this exact sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'll address your questions, yes.
Yeah, the backpack's been in my trunk for a decade.
Remember to check the batteries in that flashlight.
I actually decided I'm going to junk the flashlight and put in one of those $1 LED lights.
Excellent.
I also had one other question in all of the processes that you're looking at. It's hard to imagine today, but a while back we had some torrential rains, and there was quite a bit of landslide that was going on just before the tunnel. And as I was sitting there waiting for them to clear the one side as the traffic went by so that we could then go to the wrong side, do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so with only one way in, or two avenues to come in and out, is that something that you're looking at as well? Like what happens in the event of a landslide, and do you know what I mean? Like how are we handling that?
Yeah, that's another example. In fact, when you do the CERT training, we had quite a bit on mudslides during the CERT class because that is a big concern. And it really doesn't matter, if you're prepared for a disaster, it doesn't matter whether a tree falls and blocks the road or an earthquake disjoints the road and can't be navigated through, or it's a mudslide or it's a flood. Pescadero, the big concern down there is the flooding of Pescadero Creek Road at the bridge. So there are, whatever, it doesn't matter why the road's closed. What matters is, are we prepared to take care of ourselves until it gets rectified? That's really what this is about, is being self-sufficient and knowing we may not have much help for a few days, depending on what the event is. So that's just one example of one of the things that we'd be working on. And to answer your question, sir, there you are. I took this CERT class for the first time along with Bill. I was a student as well as kind of helping teach it. And as far as I'm aware, there has been no change in the disaster service worker law. Everybody got sworn in, they signed their forms, they're registered, and they are protected. as if you're a disaster service worker. So I don't believe that part of it has changed, but I'll look into it in case there's something that, you know, the firefighters who put on the course have missed, but they do it all the time, so I would think they're pretty much up to speed on that. And in terms of who's in charge, that really hasn't changed either. If you're the first person on the scene and you're CERT trained and you're a disaster service worker and no one else is there, you're in charge until someone else shows up of either a professional first responder, or it may be somebody that has more recently taken a CERT class, maybe knows that neighborhood better. You may pass it off to them. But until you're relieved by an actual professional first responder, you're kind of in charge, and that's why we go through the incident command system program during the CERT. And there are a lot of people that want a refresher course. Lots of folks that have taken the thing long ago and have forgotten most of it. So we're looking at putting something like that together as well.
One of the places you can outreach to is Kenyatta Cove. Many of the class members, when I was there, were from Kenyatta Cove.
It's funny you should mention that, because one of my graduates from Bill's class lives in Ocean Colony, and he's looking to put together a group of Kenyatta Cove, Ocean Colony, and Moon Ridge. Now, if that's a diverse group, let me tell you, but that's what's going to happen in an emergency. We're all in it together, okay? So we're actually working on something like that right now, and there's no reason why it can't work.
I have a question for you. Have you done any reaching out to local community groups like the surf riders and groups like that? I go by there all the time, and I think if there was a big earthquake, there's all, like today, there's tons of people on the beach, all kinds of surfers out there, and I thought, wow, you know, who in that group? That would be a good
I've been doing a lot of outreach to community organizations like COASTSIDE Hope and Puente and Pescadero and groups like that. It never even occurred to me to look to the surf rider group. They'll be happy if a tsunami comes up, probably. He surfs up.
No, they have to stop surfing for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I have a question. First of all, just to toss out on the issue of surfers, Boys and Girls Club, the kids who are in the surf group, it's run by a gentleman, I can give you his name, who is very involved in the surfing community, sort of a
Love
leadership.
to.
But my question is around, what kind of involvement is there with, say, for example, Half Moon Bay Airport, PG&E, Comcast, the cell towers?
Well, I can tell you that I haven't directly spoken to Comcast, but the airport manager and the harbor master come to our meetings, and they're involved with this.
Oh, great.
Okay, because again, you know, how many roads do we have in? I mean, when I'm not driving my county car, I have one of those gigantic BMW motorcycles that's like a 600-pound dirt bike. You know what I'm talking about? They go cross Africa on them and all that kind of thing. And I know some ways to get down here that don't involve the main roads. But let's face it, fire trucks and emergency vehicles are not going to be able to use those roads. And we're going to be on our own. So aviation and marine is going to be a big factor if we're really cut off. And this airport is capable of handling C-130 cargo planes easily. And all kinds of, the Half Moon Bay Pilots Association has informally agreed to participate in this thing, in this COASTSIDE Emergency Corps, even if it's just a matter of running medicine back and forth, or, you know, going up and if we have a huge quake or a big flood, hey, let's go up and look at it, take some pictures, send some video to somewhere, you know, get some intel on what it looks like from the air. And the same thing for the harbor. Now, if there's a bad tsunami, which is an extremely unlikely event, then the harbor it may be out of commission for a while. Okay, but if it's not a tsunami and the roads are closed, then the harbor is going to also play a big role in getting supplies and people in and out of the COASTSIDE area. So all those folks are on board with this plan, to answer your question.
One more question. Is there any reason that high school kids could do the CERT training? Do you have to be of a certain age?
It's funny you should mention that. Does anybody in here know Michelle Dragony?
Yes.
Everybody knows Michelle. Rides around on her bicycle all the time. Wears shorts in the middle of the winter, always. I know you recognize her if you saw her. She's a dynamo in this area. And we are in the middle of developing a CERT program for the high school teenagers. for exactly that reason, because especially if communications are down and we have to do something like the Silver Dragon, where there's an outbreak and we're trying to get medications out to a bunch of people. We don't want them to go somewhere and contaminate each other. We want them to stay in their homes and deliver these things door to door. Who better to do that than teenagers? So yes, we are in the works, as we speak, developing a teen CERT program for the COASTSIDE. Yes. She will. She's great. She's doing a lot of the work on this with me and for me, yes. So again, this is just a starting point, and I really would welcome anybody's suggestions, ideas, any other questions. I think most folks have my cards. You guys all have my cards?
I could use one. I don't know.
Thank you. A couple of them there. I'll put some down. And any other questions that I could answer about this?
Great job, Nick.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item on our agenda is Samtrans proposal to eliminate weekend bus service on Sunshine Valley Road. We have some folks here from Samtrans for a presentation, and so our desired outcome here is to understand the proposal and provide feedback to Samtrans.
Good evening, council members. My name is Ashish John. I'm from Samtrans. I'm joined this evening by Enrique Silvas and Samantha Erickson, and we'd like to talk to you about realigning the Route 17. So in an attempt to increase efficiency and to contain costs and to address some customer concerns, we'd like to take service and realign it from the Sunshine Valley Road onto Highway 1. This will not cause any sort of change in the service span or the service quality, but what we'll do is we'll try and make it a little bit more efficient. I'd like to turn it over to Sam. She'll go through it with you in a little more detail and talk to you about some of the specifics that are associated with it.
Hi, thank you guys. I think you guys got a memo in advance, right? Has anyone not seen that?
It's posted on our website and it's in the binder out on the table, in case
Okay,
anyone
great.
hasn't seen it.
Okay, great. So the main concern is that on weekends, the segment of the 17 that comes down 6th and then Sunshine Valley has virtually no ridership. On the weekdays, school kids take it, so that's not on the table. We would like to keep that service. It's helpful. It's being used. But if we can take out this little deviation of the 17 that is very poorly used, it will give people already on the bus a faster trip to where they're actually going. Right now, they're just sitting on the bus for 4 minutes longer to get through town. So the benefit in service planning, if there's a few people getting on and off, but not many, and then there's a few people on the bus, it's okay to inconvenience the 3 or 4 people on the bus because 3 or 4 people wouldn't have had service otherwise. But if you're talking about one person on an entire Saturday within a walkable distance to the main route that would still be served, and 15 people on the bus who are waiting through. So that's why we think this is actually a better proposal and would help the people on the bus. So that's what our assumptions are. And so we would like to put this into practice starting on August 10th. So we would only be serving Sunshine Valley Monday through Friday. Those trips wouldn't change other than if school bell times change. And the same number of trips would run on the weekend, the same frequency, the same span of service. So that's really it. That's the gist of it. And if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just want to clarify from what the memo said. I understand the map, but so the bus will go its normal route till it gets to Etheldorf,
Yes.
and instead of taking Sunshine Valley, it would follow Etheldorf to Highway 1, go
Yes.
north. Then when Main Street shows up, it'll go up on Main Street, and then when that ends, it'll go back out to the highway.
Correct.
You're not talking about, because in the letter it sounded like this deviation started at Alhambra, and stuff to Highway 1, and definitely we need Princeton and Airport Street to continue.
Yeah,
to
that, I think the way that was worded was not intentional. It was just to say between this segment and this segment takes 18 minutes. But that was just as a time point to use. Nothing will be touched down on there.
It sounds good to me. And I noticed also in your current schedule that the Sunshine Valley Road route only goes in the mornings, on the weekdays, and then southbound. And then northbound, it's only in the afternoon. So, and the rest of the time, it's over there, as you say, on Main Street and Highway 1. And then the fact that even the few people on your map there that actually do get on or off Sunshine Valley are not way up in the back. They're only a few blocks from where they could be.
Exactly.
So it looks to me like a good plan.
Okay, great. Yes.
So you mentioned a few things, saving time and money. So you mentioned 4 minutes, that cutting off the Sunshine Valley cuts 4 minutes off as a total amount of this route?
Between that segment, yeah.
Okay, 4 minutes of time saved. And how much cost is going to be saved here?
Well, it's hard to say because it hasn't been scheduled out. It's really not likely to save an entire bus, which is where the savings come in because your labor is about 70% of your transit costs. So unless you're cutting out an entire bus, it's not saving all that much. So really, it could improve efficiencies a little bit if we can get the bus turned around quicker or interline it with a different bus, and that's a little bit hard to calculate at this point. But the real benefit is for the riders.
And so then have you been getting feedback from, where is this decision coming from? Is it coming from Samtrans looking to increase efficiency and savings? Or have you been getting a lot of input from people saying,
yeah,
we want a faster route?
It started with customers saying, no one gets on, the bus is doing loop-de-loops, and we just have to sit here and take it. That's how it started. And they're right, once we looked at the numbers.
I have a quick question,
Yes.
a little bit off or different subject. Are you planning on changing the weekday schedules again to make it a little bit earlier to actually coincide with the school schedules, or you're still going to stay at
We
7?
try so hard to reach out to all the schools to get in advance the bell times. So yes, if you know someone that can reach out to, that we can speak to, because our goal is exactly that. So if the bell times are earlier, we want to be there earlier too. It makes it messy for us to have to fix it later. It's just a matter of communicating with the schools that gets a little bit tricky sometimes. So yes.
In line with what you're requesting, there should also be this padded time. I know particularly for the high school, there'd be days where they're saying, okay, it's okay to be tardy because there is huge backup. Or it doesn't matter, you should have just gotten here on time, that sort of thing. So,
well, and there's sort of two issues there. One, if we know the correct bell times, we do count backwards to give the kids 15 minutes before school actually starts. If traffic is perpetually a problem, then we need to look at how much time we think it takes to get there. So if you are seeing that the buses are regularly late, let us know so that we can adjust those schedules so that we're not getting them there actually 3 minutes before the bell because the traffic was so bad. So that's something we can address.
I mean, I won't be dealing with the high school, but I know that the principal, they're out there on the curb dealing with whether people are late or whatever's happening with the buses. So probably be important to be in touch with them on a routine basis.
Great. Another question. On the weekend, since the tunnel opened, are you noticing more ridership, people that want to go to the tunnel?
We're still waiting on ridership data. We tried to pull some and it was too soon. So nothing came back for us. So
Any anecdotal from the bus driver?
Have you guys heard, Henry, have you heard anything?
No. There's a slight uptick in the ridership. I look at it from month to month, and there is a little slight uptick. But you got to consider over 50% of ridership on Route 17 comes from your students, comes from youth. So
They're not going this line.
it's hard to gauge that core ridership is decreasing when you have over 50% of your riders are youths.
I was just wondering if there was any if you get more riders, if the buses were more frequent on the weekend, I know that's fine, to ask, but
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyone else?
So just one related question, so the 17 is now stopping at Hills Lake Park? I know for a while it was not.
Yes, it's stopping on the south side of the,
Why doesn't it stop on the north side? If
because
it's
it's
going
only
south?
safe to do so in one direction, and we need to have stops in both directions. So,
But they did put a bus stop on the north
yes,
section.
Caltrans did paint the word stop or bus stop. Yes, they did. They did.
That's
Like the arrows.
That
missing.
was, they did not work with us on that. That was just some extra paint.
Truly
they had,
beautiful.
so.
Complete fail.
Yeah.
No, she's too nice.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last item,
Comment?
comment, go ahead.
I understand the efficiency argument, and, but I'm also hearing that we don't have any numbers on money saved, or even, I guess, ridership data that's extremely recent.
Well, you're talking about different areas. We have ridership for the area we're proposing to stop surveying.
But not yet for the Duck Slide.
That's just 2 stops, which are not in the area where we're proposing a change.
Okay. I mean, I understand the efficiency argument. However, personally, I oppose this. And the reasons are, I mean, it's a tired record, people have heard. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. There's still no bus service on the road that my dad still lives on. I had to ride my bike into town and whatever, uphill, hopefully. You know, that old story. But I did have to ride my bike there on a dangerous road. And I just feel that without, okay, so it's 4 minutes of extra ride time, and I understand that. But this is a semi-rural, and that part of Montero could be classified as rural. And those folks need transportation. And when I look at the map here, and I don't even need to look at it because I ride my bike there all the time, it's a long walk from some areas out to Highway 1 or Main Street, along a road that does not have much of a shoulder. And we've already heard from CHP about people complaining about high speed on that road. And so my feeling is that eliminating all weekend service seems too much. I mean, my feeling is it's a service, and you know, if nobody uses it, it's still there. If people need to use it, there's some comfort.
That is where the cost comes in.
Well, okay, but again, we don't have any numbers on cost.
Well, we have every ride that someone pays $2 on, we're paying $37. So when you have one person an entire day getting on those 10 bus stops, that's a cost to us that we could be better using on a route, even the 17, on a route that is better used, where people do actually.
Well, I feel like this is part of a trend of less service on the coast side rather than more. And so
This is to better serve the 17 customers.
Well, okay, yes, that's your position, I understand that. My feeling from a rural background is it's taking away an option for people that live out there that maybe don't have cars and don't want to walk on a shoulderless road 1.5 miles to the next bus station. But as a suggestion, eliminating all weekend service, why not some mix of that? Why not every other stop? Every other, however many passes it makes now, eliminate every other one, or
Well, you're
2
saying
out of
every other
three.
trip?
Yeah.
Okay. There is a point at which service provision becomes, once it's infrequent enough people won't ride it at all because they can get a ride faster and they can walk faster. So if it's only coming every 3 hours, it's not reliable. It's reliable, but you need to be who schedules out, that's.
Well, but then we get back to if that was the case, then we should just keep them all. If there's people that making a schedule based on this and they have to wait 2 extra hours.
Which is why our recommendation is what it is.
Okay, I understand and I appreciate your, what your thinking is.
And
but I do feel that it doesn't serve the rural community.
Leonard?
Where are we on us, or are we on
You just handed his speech.
I just need to repeat a comment that was made by Kit Dove sometime in the late 90s regarding eliminating the last nighttime bus route. And I'm not going to try and translate it into this proposal, but I think the philosophy is clear. And what he said was, when you have a late night last run that's lightly used, and you eliminate that last run because it has very few riders, what you do is you reduce the ridership for what now becomes the last run, because people will not count on taking the last bus in case they miss it. They always plan on taking the second to the last one so that there's a fallback. If they miss it, there's one more running cleanup. And figure out how to apply that philosophy to what's going on here, because I think the same mentality is at work somehow. The continuous cuts in service lead to no service because of what is at play that Kit Dove described really well.
Okay, please, I'm sorry, your name is?
I'm Sam.
Oh, hi Sam, I'm Laura. I don't have your papers in front of me, but I thought you said that it was like 2.5 boardings a day? That's it?
Yeah, at one of the stops, and that's a stop that's about a third of a mile from the main route that would still be served all day, 7 days a week.
Okay, so obviously, I mean, I'm trying to just figure my way through this, and I don't know your business, but that would not be cost effective, I'm assuming.
To go down just for the 2.5 people a day?
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Now, like you're saying about the rural areas though, there is absolutely benefit to having coverage in rural areas. We're okay with ridership being low in rural areas. We get that, that's the nature of rural transit. But this is just a little section that's still where any ridership activity is happening today is still walkable. They will not lose their service. They're still able to get to the main line.
So the money you save, does that get reinvested into our area?
Yeah, so less gas, right? Things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be on the 17. We have a contract to run this service. So yeah, Henry, you wanna speak to that?
Again, elaborate on that a little bit. In January, we implemented our, what we call the SSP, Safe Transit Service Plan, and we increased the revenue hours of service on the Route 17 on the post side by over 50%. That's 7 days a week, which took our budget almost, we doubled our budget to provide the service on the post side. We see a need, but we also need to be efficient in that cost when we're putting that money back in. So we've increased ridership. Ridership over, in April, over last year, increased by 50%.
I'm sorry, that wasn't for you.
Ridership increased by 50% year to year from the month of April. So we're seeing a benefit of our service plan, increased service throughout the county, which included COASTSIDE. And we think that just this benefit is a unique benefit, but we're looking for efficiencies, and that was part of our service plan. So the ridership is there, the adjective that build it, and they will come, we're starting to see that. And we're seeing that on the Bayside as well with some of our other services.
The other thing I just want to make a quick comment is that it wasn't internally driven. You were responding directly to the requests of people who actually take the bus. That's what got you started in the first place, is looking at what you could do differently.
There was multiple passes to that. We had customer complaints for and against. We had customers who didn't, residents who didn't want the bus back there, so we have to weigh out all those factors.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Double Slide Ride. We have a presentation by Diana Conti, who is the CEO of PARCA, on the route and timing of recreational bike ride and PARCA fundraiser proposed to pass through the Midcoast on Highway 1 on Saturday, June 28th. After the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for questions and comments.
Hi, everybody. Thank you
Hello.
for having us here tonight. As she said, I'm Diana Conti. I'm the CEO of PARCA. You've probably heard of us. We've been around in San Mateo County since 1952, and we serve people with developmental disabilities. 3 years ago, we implemented a new fundraising opportunity for PARCA, and that was Century Bike Ride. It was originally called the Giro di Pacifica. We changed the name to the Double Slide Ride because the riders loved that name. And they love this course, very much so. And so this will be our third year. Last year we had just under 500 riders. It's hard to tell because we get most of the registrations come in at the last minute, but we could go up to as many as 700 this year. So we wanted to come and talk to you, make sure you understand what's happening. We want to be able to proactively address any concerns that may come up. It is not a race. It's not a triathlon, and it's not a race. It's a recreational ride. So we're not going to have pelotons, and we're not going to have people racing back and forth, and we're not going to have any road closures other than the tunnel in the morning. It begins at 6:30 in the morning. It's a century, a metric century, and a half metric. So it starts early, and we time that partially because century rides take a long time, and partially because there's literally no traffic. The first 2 years we did it, Caltrans said we had to get a permit to close the tunnel. Now, one person at Caltrans is saying we do this year, another one's saying we don't. So we don't know whether it's actually going to be closed or not, but it's 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday with a big wide shoulder in there. It may be possible that they've decided we don't actually have to close that tunnel. So this is just to kind of give you an overview about what it is, where we're going, and what we're doing with it. So I also have volunteers here to help with any specific questions that you have. So the beginning will be the century and metric century riders all start at the same time, and they'll be coming through this area anywhere between 6:45 a.m. and 8:15 a.m. we're anticipating. That's just in the morning. And then the half-century riders will be between 8:45 and 10:30 a.m. That we have controls in place. We have SAG people that provide support and gear help. We're going to have course marshals and course monitors, especially if there's any crossing of Highway 1 or anything that we need a little bit more help with that. We have volunteers stationed to do that. We have volunteers for the aid stations that are members of cycling clubs and triathlon clubs, so they'll be very knowledgeable. So we can do that. We haven't had any incidents on any of our previous rides. We are very, very diligent to make sure there's no litter. Afterwards, we'll go by, we'll pick anything up, we'll instruct riders as best that we can. It starts at the community center in Pacifica and ends at the community center in Pacifica. It starts down Highway 1, and then it goes up Alpine Hill and goes back Skyline and then down Sharp Park Road on the way back. So that's just a brief overview of the route and the ride, and they come back and then eat at the community center. But I'll ask for specific questions.
So just, not that I'm concerned, but to anticipate what I expect to happen and talk about after
Yes.
after the triathlon, the one and only crossing is the very correct.
Yes.
And they will be in small groups by then.
Yeah.
mentioned that on the return trip north on Highway 1, that they might cross and take Devilside Trail and then cross it north.
Yes, do you want to speak to that specifically? I'll let Jim.
Yeah.
Jim's what's right over there.
I handle the mountain bike part of it. This year, we're implementing a hike and dog walk through Shamrock Ranch. But specifically, Lisa, yeah, we're going to offer, we spoke with the parks, San Mateo Parks, and they reservations on the group going through at 6:30 a.m., which we preferred southbound because it's right turn in and right turn out. And we all know that live here, it's right turns only on Highway 1 most weekends. But coming back, the only group will be the half-century ride that'll be coming back. I mean, we estimate 75 to 100 riders there. But as Dave said, they will be spread out and coming back up Highway 1, up that steep hill to the traffic signal, and they'll have the option. We aren't saying you have to go over the new Devilside Trail. We're just saying if you want to check out the new Devilside Trail, which I'm hoping a lot of them do, but I know a lot of them are going to be pretty burnt out and want to just get back. And at that point, they're going to go into the tunnel. So a first-year thing, we anticipate at least half of them will go along the Devilside Trail. We hope they will. But there will be the crossing at the signal there.
And then at the other end as well.
Yeah, at the other end, you're right, they'll come out and have to go left on the Highway 1 and down the hill in Pacifica. But just like this last weekend, the weather gets nice. My son drove from Pacifica, Lindemar to Graywell. It took him 25 minutes. There were no bikes to blame, so it was just the congestion of a nice weekend. There's going to be, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's going to be traffic. There's going to be folks coming in and out of the Devil's Slide on the north portal recreation point. Just the bike riders are, these are fairly well-versed riders. I mean, they're, experienced. They're not like, mom with the kid with the little things on the, on the kids' helmets. These are all like fairly seasoned riders. So they know that, it's their hindquarters on the line when they get to that point, and they have to observe the, when you have an opportunity to get across the street, just like a motor vehicle would, they're going to make that move and then bam, down into Pacifica.
Yeah, it's a very challenging ride, which is what the big draw is, and why we're getting more and more ridership. It's 100 miles with a lot of very steep climbing.
Could you explain the route one? I didn't catch the end of it, so.
Yeah, there's 3 different groups of length options for the riders, for the road riders. They all start at 6:30 in the morning, but do the half-century riders stop a little bit later?
Yeah, the half-century goes a little bit later.
Okay, a little bit later. So
Yeah, well, the
It is
metric
on the
century
second
goes
page,
later.
too.
metric, there you go. Okay, so the 2, there'll be 3 separate groups. The 2 will start together in the morning, and the 3rd group, which is the shortest route, to keep it simple, they'll be the only group. They'll turn around at San Gregorio, take Stage Road back to Highway 1, and then just return on northbound Highway 1.
Yeah, the shortest route is just down and back.
You're going down to San Gregorio?
Yeah, that's the short
That's
loop.
the short route, Laura.
They got real comfy seats.
Oh, this is to give you an idea of who these riders are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, so how
Sure.
long do you because the other 2 groups are kind of doing a loop
Yeah,
like
they're
this.
doing a huge loop.
Right, but the short group is actually going back and forth on the highway, so they'll actually be coming back theoretically during prime
Right.
traffic time.
Right, but there'll be no,
Well,
nothing in.
it's a shorter route, so it'll be midday. So,
11:45.
the metric half-century riders would start come through between 8:45 and 10:30, and then return between 10:15 and 11:45.
So you're anticipating the last of your shorter distance riders are going to be done with the route by noon?
Roughly, yeah. I mean, there'll be stragglers, and a lot of folks are probably going to stay up on Devil's Slide.
Well,
It's
one
gonna be nice
of
up
the
there.
things with a ride instead of a race is that you get riders at all different levels. There are some people who are really
Yeah.
fast, other people who are slower. But, people know that this is a ride that is challenging because it is so steep in part of it.
what do you see as the biggest downsides to this for the coastside?
I think we have to make sure that we get rid of any possible litter. We have to make sure that we've gone through a whole permit process so that we're locating aid stations in places that are working for different communities. We're hoping there's not going to be a big traffic impact. I guess crowd control kinds of concerns, although we've worked with police and fire and first responders, and there don't seem to be any concerns.
Because people start arriving around noon. I mean, it's like from noon and after, in my experience living near Surfers Beach, so.
Well, they're all, on the shoulder, and once they get, just going up the hill out of Pacifica, they spread out like an accordion. It's just, oof, you've got, nothing like the triathlon, which is the Nightmare Easter Sunday thing, the debacle that, has been in the news. So they're going to be on the shoulder, and they're, instructed as best we can to say, when you come to a red light, stop. There's a couple of them, but.
I understand most of that route, there's a shoulder, and that sounds like it'll work really well. And even inside the tunnel, there's plenty of room.
Right.
It's the approach.
Oh, it's terrible.
On either side of
Yeah.
the tunnel, there is no shoulder. And we've had this discussion here when the trail opened, that really it's so dangerous from Montero State Beach up to the tunnel. Basically, in my mind, I'm not a bike rider, but if I encounter a bike riding along like that, and there's no space to cross over oncoming traffic, I would slow down and just travel with the bike, and it would seem to me that's what will happen, won't it?
Well, the last couple of
Well,
years.
we've had a CHP escort to help with that area.
Well, what
Because
can
it's
they
a
do?
small
Because
shoulder.
the bike has to be in the travel lane. And so the cars have to go to the speed of the bike when they're going uphill.
Can you answer that? This is another volunteer, Elias Olson. He also happens to be my husband, just so you know. You can explain how that happened.
The fact of the matter is, there's been no issues whatsoever in the past going north.
Stand in front of the mic.
There are only probably maybe 100 riders who are going to take the short route. Most people are hardcore. They're going to keep going, make the loop around Skyline. There have been no issues. The shoulder hasn't changed. As you know, there are riders by the hundreds every weekend that come down here to ride on a nice day. It's not an organized ride, they're just riding. They go on both ways without any escort. We have an escort going south. We talked about having one going north, but they're too spread out. We had the CHP and a motorcycle officer there. We're going to escort them back, but it's hard to get them to a safe place for them all to clump together. And most people just want to get the ride done. They don't want to wait for 25 minutes or half an hour for some straggler to come on. So it hasn't been an issue. It's much like it is now. In terms of, they're just riders going up the road. Just like you have now. Riders going south, you have riders going north. They climb that hill every day.
How many times have you guys done this?
This will be the third year.
Your third year? Okay.
Speaker Slipper Bill Keyhole?
I never noticed. I was at work the whole time, but I never
No,
noticed. I never heard anything.
So, I like Parker, you do good,
He's very patient.
good work, really good. But we're back to a problem, Lisa just brought it up, I'm glad Nicholas is back here to hear this. There is no shoulder to either approach. So today, when I go through Devil's Slide, if there's a bike there, like she said, you have to stop and wait until there's no traffic, and you basically have to go over the yellow line, because you gotta give them now by law 3 feet. So, and you do that anyway because there's no shoulder. If they do fall, you want at least 3 feet. So we've only got this road that goes in and out here, and you're only one of multiple different organizations that constantly want to be doing things on Highway 1, and that impacts 25,000 people out there. And it happens now since the Devil's Slide Park opened up, and I hear this complaint all the time because unfortunately people still think I'm on this council. but on a given day, on a given weekend day, There are cars parked all along the shoulders, even where the orange cones are, saying you're not supposed to park there. Sometimes the sheriff's officer and the CHP are out there giving out tickets, but it doesn't matter. You got people parked, then you have people with strollers, or people with bikes, or walking the dog on a leash. And it's in areas where there's only a 2-lane road, which brings traffic to a stop. So you're basically saying to us that we'll be looking at another Saturday morning, one of 6 or 7 we have to do up a year, that we cannot, we have to plan our weekend excursions if we want to go to the city, or if we only want to go to Pacifica to do our grocery shopping around this other activity. I like the fact that you're doing it, but the other side of the bay has beautiful trails on the bay, and they have lots of parallel streets that traffic can get around it if they know something's going on. We got one parade route, and you're going to be using it up. So I really think, and I've brought this up to the council before, Nicholas, this is another thing I'm going to have to start coming back here for, but where is the event permitting process for the COASTSIDE? We have lots of events out here, and everybody has a great charity, and that, I support a lot of those, but how many times do we have to give up our lifestyle because everybody wants to come here to play? So you need to look at that.
Well, you're looking at tourist dollars too, Bill. We want the tourists to come here. So you're saying, the only shutdown is going to be at 6:30 in the morning out of Pacifica. Returning, there will be no escort through the northbound tunnel.
There will still be, and you'll have the straggler effect.
There's bicycles on that road every day. So,
so that's just, it's my argument, just another time that we're going to be stuck in slowing down.
Get on a bike sometime, Bill, and
I used to ride a bike a lot.
Yeah,
I thought I had to be at home, but I gave it up. And I really resent that, Jim. If you want to be insulting, we'll take this and have a nice discussion later. But again, let me please finish. Please let me finish. I was interrupted. I'm sorry. And I really resent that, Jim. I thought I knew you better. So, if you want to be insulting, grow up.
Yeah, thanks.
The issue here is not whether or not different bicycle people want to be out there using it. The issue is what right do the rest of the people that pay taxes here have? Yeah, we like tourist dollars, but this drives away tourist dollars. Ask the businesses locally when there's a special event here, and I've done this when I was on the council, they drive away the normal business. Nobody that lives here will go down to the city, Hepburn Bay, when they know there's an event going on because the highway's shut down. So it's only your one charity that you're thinking about, but we have to think of 12 or 14 of them a year. Anyway, I'm really disappointed. I'm really disappointed.
Nicholas, did you have something to say?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, just that we're actually, Chris Hunter from Supervisor Horsley's office is working with multiple agencies to address the special event permitting process out here on the coastside. So we are aware, and after the triathlon, it was clear that that needs to be assessed, and we were doing that prior to, Supervisor Horsley had Chris working on that prior to the triathlon incident, and so we are aware and we are working on that.
I have a speaker slip from Gail Erickson, and after Gail, Leonard.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I am working right now as a volunteer at the Devil's Slide, the new trail that's opened up there. And my understanding is some people are going to have the option of taking that trail. And one of the things I was going to mention to you, because I've gone up there quite a bit, and on Saturdays, on weekends, and this could be too early in the morning for some, but maybe on the return trip, it gets very, very crowded. Very crowded. And also a lot of bicyclists use it. And there's some of the hills area, it goes downhill. And also, more recently, a lot of skateboarders. So I bring that up only because it's really something I know that the county is saying, if you're working with the county, they know this. And it's definitely on weekends to be expecting that you're going to have, those who take that option, they may find themselves not only with other bicyclists and pedestrians, but also skateboarders. So I would definitely talk to somebody in the county about that and get their guidance on that. Yeah, we've been talking to them. Yeah, because that's really important, I think.
That's the uphill direction too, coming from south and north.
Yeah.
So folks are not going to be, bombing around.
Well, but anyway, if you're working with the county on that, I think it would be fine, because there are people that are volunteers that might be of some assistance too.
I mostly agree with Bill's comments. Now, we do really need to get usable bike lanes from here to Pacifica. haven't heard any actual plans to get that done. One of the requests that I would make is that all of the bicyclists be told that in any place where it's possible for a car to pass the bicyclist, if they're single file, but not, if they're not single file, that they are absolutely not allowed to pass if that would impede the flow of vehicular traffic. That's kind of a complicated concept, so I hope I explained it clearly enough. That if a single file bicyclist does not impede traffic, but side by side they will, then they are not allowed under any conditions to pass in that section, period.
We make that perfectly clear to the riders. These people are seasoned riders. This is not going to be the people riding 3 abreast going down the street. We'll remind them again, and we'll give them handout material. I think it's on the website, instructions, but definitely on the day of the ride. They're out there with a megaphone telling them what to do and what not to do. On the other hand, they are human beings. We all are. Some people take it upon themselves to do whatever they do. We've had 0 complaints. Anybody talking about moving traffic either direction or riding 2 or 3 abreast or any of that.
Okay.
So then we know.
Appreciate it. One last comment. I once saw a guy on a unicycle riding downhill there toward Pacifica.
Wow. You still with us?
A question, do you know if Caltrans will be using their changeable message signs inside the tunnel to alert the drivers what's going on, you know?
They did last year.
They did? Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'm a cyclist. I love, you know, I'm all over this. This is great. I just did the route actually this past weekend about my stuff. That's a really challenging route, and it's challenging to put an event on this. I definitely appreciate what Bill has to say about the impact that it has on the coast side. And the reason that I wanted to make a comment on this is because I'm big into cycling, and the Tour of California has come through here, and they actually have a rolling shutdown of the road. You know, there's been a lot of comments in the paper and people gnashing of teeth and, you know, about what the impact that's going to be. And, you know, it turned out to be a minimal impact, although some. But in talking with Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce and City of Half Moon Bay officials as to what they could do at that time, which was 2006, 7, 8, and 9, to mitigate the community apprehension about events like this, would be to involve the community, make this part of, you know, that there's something in it for the community. And with the Tour of California, what I proposed to the City of Half Moon Bay and the Chamber of Commerce was, you know, having a little fair or event down there with vendors and things like that, having a set of bleachers. This is for the professionals now, so it's a little different, but I just want to lay it. Having a set of bleachers, a guy with a megaphone, you know, describing people coming through. So that would work for the Tour of California, but it's not going to work for this where it's, you know, good riders, but a bunch of nobodies that, you know, nobody cares about. But, you know, to Bill's point about, what about us? You know, I've talked to Sharice McHugh about the COASTSIDE being an ecotourism hub. Well, it can be, and events like this and the triathlon and other things can make it that, but not as isolated events. And so I guess my question for you is, you know, I know this is an event starting in Pacifica, ending in Pacifica, but it is, you know, the impact on Pacifica is minimal compared to the impact on Highway 1 here. What, how did you reach out to Half Moon Bay City Council, Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce, to see if there's some way to synergize this as part, you know, Sharice McHugh of the Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce purports that she has a strong ecotourism program, and I've tried to talk to her about this is a way to bolster that. Have you been in contact with her or the City of Half Moon Bay about some way to synergize this event, to bring the coastside residents in and make even people that are not riding it part of this event so that they're not feeling like this is an intrusion on our area, our lifestyle, our roads for something that we're not even doing and is not even in our community? what kind of outreach to those entities?
We haven't done a lot of outreach beyond the city of Pacifica, but thank you for that suggestion, and we should do that. Really, we do see this ride as really promoting ecotourism. It's already drawing from all over the Bay Area and all over Northern California. We think this will really put this area on the map in terms of being a great place for recreational outdoor activities. I mean, it really is getting a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement. It's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful rides we've ever seen, and we get that comment from everybody. I mean, it's just, the whole route is absolutely spectacularly gorgeous. And by the same token, it's challenging enough where it's really drawing to people. And these are people who, what the idea is to draw from even out of state eventually, to have people come in. The people, in order to be a cyclist at this level, you have to have a certain amount of disposable income, or you really can't afford to do it. And it tends to be people who are very high achieving people. High achieving people tend to be people who have been high achievers in their income levels as well. So we do see this as something that could potentially be good for all of the coast side, and that's our hope. And so we do, thank you for that suggestion. We do need to reach out more to the other chambers of commerce.
And those are great points, and I'm glad that you said that. I just want to reiterate them, because that's what I mentioned to Sharice, is these are high-income people with bikes that cost more than some of our cars, who would be willing to set up week-long trips and come here and stay at coastside hotels for a week and go out to Mount Tam and Mount Diablo and other places that they've seen on TV and seen in events like this. But there has to be some kind of connection between these events and the entities that can help facilitate that, like Chamber of Commerce, like City of Half Moon Bay. So yeah, I think that's a missing piece here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm sure I'll irritate everyone, but I think the crux of the issue in my opinion is that there's a real plus to being put on the map, but for those of us who sit in traffic every weekend, we don't want to be on the map. And so it's like, yeah, we need the money, but we sure would rather not have to put up with this. So to me, that's the conflict here. I agree with Bill in terms of a permitting process. This has to be organized. You just have a standard way in which it takes place. But that's not your fault that it's not in place.
Yeah, no, I think point well taken. There's going to be some conflicting needs in that, and what I can say to that is we're doing everything we know to do right now to mitigate those concerns, but we'll keep talking. Huh?
You didn't let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's really exciting. I don't want to put up with traffic either, but the times to me, and I'm just living in my one little piece of El Granada, feel like the traffic doesn't, people are coming in after 12 o'clock. I mean, I think your timing was really, I don't see it impacting people at 10 or 11 in the morning, to be perfectly honest. I certainly could be wrong there. I guess I've been here long enough to see a lot of nitpicking about these events, and there's a way in which that kind of gets ugly too. So there's got to be a middle ground. But I think mostly it's people's frustration about the traffic we're in, and I support the event. So, Bill, I hope you don't have my phone number.
I just wanted to say my comments earlier about, were mainly focused, on the approach to the tunnel on either side. And when I first looked at your routes, I think they are spectacular. It is world class. I think the one that's the problem is the outback.
Yes, it is.
That's
the biggest.
That's the one. They all come through in the beginning. It's there and it's gone. They've had the experience, but to add on this return thing, that's sort of what pushes it to, it's kind of annoying. And so, I guess we'll see how it goes. I mean, I never go on the weekend anyway, so, but, when you first approached me, or your organization, it was before we had these two recent congestion events, and I thought, oh, what a great program, and then we had all this concern about the congestion of the other events, so I anticipate there will be more discussion here tonight.
Just a footnote, it's gone through here for 2 years and nobody apparently noticed,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
So what does that matter?
The same number of
That's
people.
good and bad too, probably.
Well, but the park wasn't open. I was just gonna say, the one thing that did change though is that the park wasn't open. For the previous 2 rides, the park wasn't open, correct?
That's correct.
So
It was
you
not an
don't
option.
really know, I mean, you can speak to how it's has or hasn't impacted the community in the past, but with the park being open, I mean, this is gonna be a new, you know, like.
That's a
It's just,
change.
yeah, so, so if I could just jump in real quick with 2 things. The first is that, I don't know how much you're working with the sheriffs on, you know, the route, but to Lisa's point that she brought up earlier, this happens to be a little pet peeve of mine, because I feel like, why do we have no parking signs when everybody parks there anyway? And they go out to the Lemony Snicket house, you know, the one that's like falling off of the cliff. And so I think that working with the sheriffs and making sure that people are not parking in those areas is gonna be huge for you. The second thing is that because your riders start and finish in Pacifica, yet you talked about all of the communities, the beautiful communities they go through them, and then, but they don't stop. They start in Pacifica and they end in Pacifica. So I think what would be nice is if you could speak to your riders and say, hey, just be mindful of the fact that these communities have allowed us to come in and see what they have to offer. So while it might not be today, come back and visit, come back and spend some time, come back and stay for the weekend and do some day rides. Because again, they're gonna be on their bike and they're not getting off. So if you can ask them to do that, I think that would, you know, that would be appreciated by the businesses in the
We're
area.
happy to do that, and if any of you would like to come and speak at the lunch afterwards, you're welcome to do that. Or if there's anybody else you'd like to send, we're really happy to do that.
Oh, that's great. That's a nice
You know,
invitation.
another footnote, I like footnotes, and this footnote is to promote business on the side. We hear comments from riders who finish saying, this is the most beautiful ride I've ever seen. I'm gonna come down here and bring my wife. We're gonna stay a weekend. We're gonna ride around. We're gonna go to the beaches, because a lot of them don't know about the area. So we'll promote it.
You know, in the future, the kind of grand plan in the future is there would be packages that we could offer. So, you know, you have your registration, and then here's a lodging package, that kind of stuff. And, you know, discounts to local restaurants, things like that. I mean, I do think this could turn into a whole coast-side-wide kind of event and destination.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, I'm good.
I
Dan.
didn't want to forget this thought. One of the things I think that helps a lot is for the community to know in advance what's happening when, and sometimes that doesn't happen as well. And I was thinking, you know, Half Moon Bay has that sign that they sometimes put on the side of 92 just as you hit Main Street. It's a big sign that you can change the. It would be great if they put something on that sign indicating, you know, this event is happening and here's when and here's the time.
Who would we contact
I
about
have the
that?
faintest idea.
Who?
CHP,
Oh, the CHP, okay.
because they're state roads, so you have to get the CHP to,
No,
Or state
I
things.
think it's a city sign is
Yeah, I think it
is
is
what
too.
she's referring to. It's,
They would do it on the CHP highway SR1, right? They need to.
no, but it's a fixed sign.
I think they're rentable also.
No, it's rentable.
Talking
It's
about
one
the
that's
portable
not-
one?
Portable ones.
It's got
Oh,
They're
tires.
rentable, so that might be something you would contact the safety,
The
road
sheriff's,
safety company.
the sheriff's department has them, CHP has them, and I believe as stated, Half Moon Bay owns one.
I think so, because they have things specifically about Half Moon Bay events. But maybe, because Half Moon Bay will want to know about it too. And anything in the newspaper, and anything to say, Coastsiders, here's the date and time to be aware of, you know, like we all know about Dream Machines to get all of our food, you know, like on Friday before everybody comes in, you know, seriously, things like that, you know.
you know, if they did this on Dream Machines Day, they wouldn't have to worry about interaction between vehicles and cars. Vehicles aren't moving.
One more thing about safety, I just wanted to say that I do support the
Not
event.
for
I've
the
cycled
Midcoast.
many years of my life, and I
There's
respect
the
cyclists
ID,
on the road.
which
One
is the
thing I want to
Business
say,
Improvement District,
back up a
collection
little
of
bit,
hotels.
as a child,
Specifically
I did
for
a lot of driving up the coast all the way to British Columbia during the summer. And I'm remembering back, we passed a lot of motorhomes, but this was in the late 60s, early 70s. At that time, it was very popular for cyclists on the Highway 1 to have these flags with the little poles, the flags, just kind of like a little safety. It really makes a big difference as far as visual, hey, I see, it really stands out. Now, I do understand that cyclists of today, they probably think that, maybe that's a little dorky looking, okay? Or, more important, there's a little air drag. It slows it down a little bit. But I thought that, some of the stronger cyclists that are participating through here might want to volunteer and maybe start a trend in the spirit of safety for everybody.
We do have, actually, it's an idea. We have some people this year who are like ride ambassadors who are names, they're not like the names for the Tour de California, but there are more recognizable local names if you're in the cycling community that are going to be participating in this ride, and they're going to be bringing some of their friends. So we will sit down and talk to them and try and get some ideas from them, the things that people would actually do that would improve that.
The other thing is there is a cycling kit that's been specially designed for this ride. It's on the website for the ride, if you wish to look at it. Very bright colors. We encourage people to wear bright colors. I'm a cyclist, I'm a triathlete. When I see people on the road like we all often do, wearing a black bike, everything they're wearing is black. All I say to myself is, what an idiot. What are you going to do? It's stylish to wear black helmets. I don't understand it. So we do our best to make people wear the brightest thing they can. And if they invest in this such custom outfit, you'll see them, believe me.
You know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, it's like an antenna.
Fiberglass. Someone can buy one. I remember those, yeah, like 20 years ago.
They put them on kids' bikes,
Usually
yeah.
for the kids' bike. Or somebody going
They need
2
a cool
miles
one
an
as
hour.
well.
Yeah, especially with the turns, it was really big visual help.
So I've been on many of these rides, from hundreds of people to thousands of people, like to see how important. And the vast majority of the riders are well behaved and safe. But I do want to reiterate the single file part of this. There are both beginners and very advanced riders who, both for different reasons, tend to violate that. So I would really suggest and reinforce that at the start, particularly on the uphill part going back to the tunnel. That's where it's going to be tough, and uphill going into the tunnel, of course. At the end of the day, when people are more tired, they're often worse. I would also reinforce it with the zag stops. We'll have people going back and forth. They'll notice people who are the worst offenders, sort of call them on it at the next stop, show them into it. It's the kind of thing that works. On Seattle, Portland, which is, I don't know how many thousands of people, there's about 1 in 400 or 500 who cause a lot of the problems. So, they make everybody else look bad.
That pretty much holds any group. And rest assured, they'll be reminded repeatedly, as they have been in the past. I think our regulations say right single file, visas stay between, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Yeah, they all say it's the shaming of the line letters that helps.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it
I
does.
fully support this. I lived in Montero during the last ride, and I didn't see any problems. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there is now a really expensive.
So I see there are a lot of cyclists on this council. If any of you would like to participate, we would be happy to comp you.
Chris?
So, really and truly, we'd love to have you be part of this. It'll be, you can be our ambassadors to the COASTSIDE community.
There you go.
You'll have to wear.
Are you
signs
volunteering?
on it.
Yeah.
You'll have to have a flag.
I may have to contact you about that. I wouldn't do the comping just because I'm not sure that that's appropriate, but I'm definitely interested in the ride and appreciate the offer. I want to follow up on what Dan said about, sorry Dan, but that's never going to happen. The flags,
Too far behind, huh?
yes, it's never going to happen, but it's an excellent idea, and one thing that maybe as a cyclist who does a lot of these events, I would ask for you next year is that you require every rider to have a flasher and/or a rear view mirror of some kind. I will not set one tire on the road without both of those things. A flasher attaches to your back or to your seat post. It weighs almost nothing. A bright LED flasher can be seen a long way away. And I have a rear view mirror that attaches to my eyeglasses. Now I can see what's coming up behind me, way back there, and I can get over, I can plan, and it's not just like, oh, it's right up on me. So those are two things. I've done races and events before where they've required on a mountain trail that everybody have a bell on their bike because there was traffic coming the other direction. And so they inspected everybody before they left. You had to have a bell or you were not going. And so it's not beyond the realm of possibility for you to have some kind of requirement on that. I bet most people are going to have a flasher anyways, but a flag's never going to happen. But a flasher,
I'm going to go buy a flag and put it on right on the road. Yeah, you can still buy the flags. Recumbent riders are the ones that tend to use them most for obvious reasons.
Well, thank you for those suggestions, and we'll follow up. And I am serious about comping it. I am serious about that. That's and it's not against our policies, and we're doing that with some of the high name riders. That's how we're going to get the ridership up. So please contact me.
It would need to be recorded as a deal under the campaign plan.
Yeah, that.
It would.
Yeah.
It's what is the registration
As
fee?
long as we reward it.
It's a gift work of about $68, but we'll let you know that.
It'd be worth filling out 10 pages of paperwork.
Yeah.
For the job here, so we could get a copy.
One more quick comment from Bill.
There was something I forgot to ask, and this is strictly to the council. They do say that they had talked to CHP and other law enforcement. So what you should ask for is the incident operation plan to see what their whole take is on where they see the hot spots, where they're going to set up to control traffic and the rest of it, and see how that's going to be impacting before you all jump on board with your bike. They can tell you whoever their incident command person is for this. They had the meeting, but.
Oh, from the organization doing the event?
Yeah, I'm sure they're working, whoever they're working with, maybe is it the police chief in Pacifica that started it? Or?
Yeah, the person that's working with them was not able to be here tonight, so I don't have the name, but we could certainly get it.
How will we communicate that what's in this report, Bill? I'm based out there.
So anytime they have multiple agencies working together on some kind of an event or a process, they set up what's known as an incident command or an event command. And with that, all the different jurisdictions say what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be located, what frequencies they're going to talk on. I mean, it just goes down the whole list of things. But what you'd be interested in is where they're focusing the resources for, in this case, traffic control, because that's really what the discussion was here. So that's the part you want. But it goes into a whole bunch of stuff. But it's an ICS document that all these things have to follow.
I think that's smart, because especially when people are upset in the community, to have the information or to be able to let people know what is going to be taking, what kind of controls are in place before this starts would be a nice thing to be able to kind of put out there. So would you be responsible for procuring that?
Yeah, I need to make sure I understand exactly what it is you need a copy of.
He's talking about, I think, the traffic control issues, how they've just been assigned and what their plan is. I think that would be smart to have. I'm just one person speaking here.
It seems to me that, Nicholas, that this would be something that would be in part integral to this permitting thing that is being worked on. That what is proposed here, in my inclination, is that it's above my pay grade.
Was that last part?
I just felt like it was above my pay grade. I didn't feel like wading into such a document, but
I will definitely bring that back to Chris Hunter, who's working on it from Dawn's office.
Putting that up there.
I love data.
We all know. But you're good at analyzing.
Will there be Mazzetti's cake at the end of the route? Because if there is, I'll be there.
One of our sponsors.
That's too bad.
I saw that.
They sponsor everything. It's great.
They do. They are providing the bulk of the lunch afterwards.
Wow, that's great.
Plus, she does these great gift packs that we wrap up.
And pillow frosting.
including a pie a month and a cake a month.
Wait, what's a pie man and a cake
But
Per
now
month- per month.
Nicholas is interested.
man? You can't talk about pie and cake at 9 o'clock at night and not expect me to, not expect to pique my interest.
I think you have to join this ride too. Are you a cyclist?
It's ugly. I can ride a bike. It's ugly. Yeah. You trust me. You don't want me.
You're welcome to come to the lunch and you can buy a raffle ticket so you can get a pie a month or a pie or a cake a month.
There we go.
All right.
Training wheels are okay. With a
Yeah.
long flag.
Okay, so are we ready to wrap this up?
The poor chair.
Yes.
I'd just like to thank you for coming.
Thank you for having
I hope
us.
the event goes smoothly and is a great success.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you.
If I could make just a quick comment, this year we've incorporated,
No worries.
at the
You know where to find me?
facility,
Good luck.
2 loops within the Shamrock Ranch, which are private trails. This is normally stuff you could never access. And the trails actually go under the new bridge that accesses the North Fork. There'll be a shorter and a longer loop for dog walkers and hikers.
Oh, cool.
So that'll start around 10:30 p.m.
I do not have my cards with me, but let me write down my email for you.
Thanks again. Next item on our agenda is council activity, correspondence received and meetings attended. Does anyone have anything to report?
Yes.
Go ahead.
As I mentioned, I attended the COASTSIDE Design Review meeting on May 8th, and I already told you that they've got some big events coming up, and that they're really staffing up. And again, Laura said it, but thank you to Laura and to Chris Lang for really, and Nicholas for really pushing that.
And Lisa.
And Lisa, and I really look forward to next year when all these people are on board and fully seasoned. It will be really, I mean, really, the CDRC is functioning really, really well right now. We've had a couple of difficult projects, and they've been worked through in quite an impressive way. On May 1st, I also attended the GSD Town Hall. I believe Dan and Dave were also there. And much better behavior than last time. People were more civil. Consolidation is definitely the elephant in the room on this particular issue. And I'm not sure if people are using that as a wedge or if they're really into it, but it's underlying a lot of the discussion. I also felt that there was considerable misunderstanding, possibly willful, about how much money this is going to cost and where it's going to come from. I felt that the GSD people explained it and explained it again, and it was in the documents, and people just can't get past that. They're just locked onto my taxes, my taxes, my taxes, when it's been explained that taxes are not going to be applied to this. So, much better than last time. I still see an entrenched opposition to this measure, and I also, in talking to people in the community, I also feel that there's still a lot of ignorance about it and misunderstanding. That people don't know where the money's coming from, what exactly is going to happen. They want to see these projects already developed when you can't. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of people still don't know about it.
I think the first show.
Not right now.
No.
The first showing of this meeting will be tomorrow, and so we have a board meeting tomorrow night. People can come and ask questions tomorrow night.
Dave?
I attended the Half Moon Bay Library stakeholders meeting. They have narrowed down on some of the choices. They are now planning to present the final plan at a July 15th special meeting in Half Moon Bay City Council. So people who are interested in that should plan on that meeting. They now have comments from over 700 people. They've been doing outreach at the farmers market and New Leaf market on weekends and the like. So you're getting feedback from both kids and adults.
What do you think about it?
I think they're headed in the right direction. Unfortunately, a lot of what people like looks like it's going to be moderately expensive, so we'll see what the budget looks like when they get to their final choices. The other big issue has been parking, since the new library will use up most of the lot. And the plan is to share parking with the adjacent school parking. Everybody's conceptually okay with that. There's only going to be a few weekends when there might be issues.
Well, and the school's been using their lot for years, though.
Thanks for covering this for us. Anybody else? Future agendas for May 28th, we have Public Works is going to come out and make a presentation on unpermitted encroachments in the public right-of-way. They're going to explain what the laws are. And follow up on the rodenticide issue. County Vector Control will make a presentation on their use of rodenticides.
The district?
Yes. County Vector Control District, Mosquito and Vector Control District. Anybody else have something you want to put on future agendas? May I have a motion to adjourn?
You have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We need a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
No, not for the German.
We don't need a second for adjournment, do we?
Was the CHP